Ed Balls, do you think they're in political trouble? Let's leave the budget aside for the moment.
We know that Simon Hughes today has said he may be going to vote against the VAT rise because he says it's regressive and unfair. So there's some issues there. But I think actually what we've seen has been really interesting the last few weeks. We've seen the Liberal Democrat Party expose the two very different parties within it. And what you've got is Nick Clegg and Danny Alexander, David Laws, others, who actually believe with George Osborne and David Cameron, that if we cut public spending, we cut the size of the state, if the government gets out of the way...
Hey, you left Vince Cable off that list.
Well, I did, because I think...
On purpose?
Well, no, there are other people on the other side of the Liberal Democrat Party, like Simon Hughes, who actually take a more progressive view and think the government's quite important in delivering public services and delivering fairness and opportunity. And I'm afraid I have no idea now which wing of the Liberal Democrat Party Vince is on, because he's, I think, defending the indefensible. And everything I've heard him say for the last few years suggested to me he was a progressive Liberal Democrat rather than an orange book anti-state Liberal Democrat. I think Vince may be on the right side of the argument or not. I think that what the orange book, the right-wing Liberal Democrats are proposing with the Conservatives is profoundly misguided. There is a choice on the economy and on public services. Cutting spending now and this deeply while raising taxes will lead to more unemployment, slower growth, higher borrowing. It is back to the 1930s, back to Thatcherism of the 1980s, and I cannot understand why a progressive Liberal Democrat like Vince Cable is, I think, can be going along with this economic and social madness.
Vince Cable, you stood down as Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats. Simon Hughes was elected Deputy Leader, and he has said, as Ed Balls was saying, when it comes to the budget, we'll vote for it, but if there are measures to improve fairness and we'll come forward. Can the party stick together?
It will stick together. And he wasn't suggesting he was going to... He's a terrific MP. Enormous respect for him, and he's part of the coalition and supports it.
You think he won't vote against any of the budget measures?
He's not going to. We'll see what happens. He's not going to.
Will he vote for the VAT rise?
You've talked over him. Sorry, can you just say it again?
He's part of the coalition. He will support it.
The VAT rise?
He will support the budget.
The VAT rise?
Let me just answer the question that was put to me. I mean, I've had myself being analysed by other people. Let me just explain why I'm in this coalition. We have a major national emergency, an economic emergency. It is very, very serious, right? We had the collapse of the banking system. It's followed by a major recession. The country is now actually significantly poorer than it was 2 years ago. It's had a massive impact on the public finances, which now have to be sorted out. Arising from this election, we've now got two parties working together. I think actually people in the country rather like the idea, a very unusual idea, that parties actually work together rather than kick hell out of each other and believe in this very tribal, destructive way. And that's the spirit in which we've entered this.
And you think the Liberals will cling together, hang together?
Of course we will.
Isn't the problem, though? Isn't the problem that you kick out of each other in public, and then in private you get together and make deals?
No, we have
differences. I think it's what makes
we have differences, and they're openly expressed. But in government, as in a family, as in a company, you make compromises. I mean, just to take one example, Caroline mentioned the question of Trident missiles. I happen to disagree, and my party happens to disagree with the Conservatives about the future of the Trident missile. It's an openly expressed difference. It doesn't actually affect the budget, because it's a long way down the track, and we're jointly commissioning a value for money study. But it is possible to have different political views, to compromise and work together in the public interest.
Do you find it comfortable sitting in this government?
I find it comfortable in the coalition. I found it difficult to face the very, very tough decisions we've got to make. Look, it would be so much more fun to be Father Christmas, right? Dishing out lots of money and tax cuts and public spending for all. We cannot do that, all right? It is a crisis that we have to manage.
There's a real danger that the medicine which the coalition government is saying it's so reluctant to have to serve up is actually going to make the patient far worse. What we're actually going to see is over 1 million people thrown out of work as a result of these policies. Yeah, of course you are, and we've talked already about looking at the Home Office. Let me finish this point, because you're going to have lots of people thrown out of work, and where is the demand going to come from for the private sector, which is supposed to move into the space that the public sector has left behind. I want to say as well, what are the Lib Dems
like many
for?
business people, I was very against the idea of a coalition. Many of us thought that they wouldn't be able to get to resolution so quickly. So I think what's happened is actually that conflict resolution within this coalition has actually been outstanding. They've come to a budget very, very quickly in the national interest. And it is in what they believe to be the national interest. Compromises had to be made on both sides. And to attack people for making compromise is naive.
It's where you compromise. Of course, I'm in favour of coalition governments, but when you've got compromises on Trident, on nuclear power, on academies, on the VAT thing, on whether or not you make cuts at all, about the ratio of tax to cuts, there are so many compromises. What have the Lib Dems got out of it? They say they've got the bank levy out of it. Actually, that was Tory policy. You know, they say.
Why do you think that, according to the polls today, 57% of the country think that the Osborne's decisions are broadly right, and 49% blame the last Labour government for the spending cuts, not the coalition?
Well,
if you're right,
well, I think the Labour.
wrong.
No, well, I think two things. I think first of all, of course, the Labour government was deeply responsible for part of the mess that we're in. But I also think that these cuts haven't started to bite yet.
Well, so
people don't yet know what 25%. Well, I'm just saying that. I mean, already we've had Peter Hitchens saying, is that 25% cut really going to happen to those departments? I fear they are. You're going to lose 35,000 police, perhaps. You're going to lose thousands of teachers, hospital workers. I think that's a pretty great.
We've done quite a lot on that. We've got one more question on today's news, which I'd just like to take from Angela Gunn, and then we'll move on to other topics. Angela Gunn, please.
Well, I have to work till I'm 70 to pay for gold-plated public sector pensions.
The announcement that the possibility of people having to work to 70 before they get their state pension, and Angela Gunn's question is whether this is to pay for gold-plated public sector pensions. Do you approve of this proposal? You're in favour of extending the time people have to go on working for to 70 or more?
We, when we were in government, looked at this very carefully, and we did say that for people in their 30s and in their 40s, as we're all living longer and we need to pay for pensions, it was right that people in their 30s and 40s would get the state retirement benefits at a later 66, 67. Today, suddenly out of the blue, we've told men aged 58, 59 that they're going to be working for an extra year in just a few years' time, and they'll lose £8,000 as a result. And I feel that for many people in their late 50s, men and women, the rug's being pulled from under them. Their plans have been undermined. Many of these people are already not working now because they've taken early retirement. And I think to do this in this precipitate, fast way is really, really unfair. If you're going to do this properly, you should do it fairly and in a steady way. And to say to police officers, teachers, nurses, who've given years of public service, suddenly we're going to start cutting your pensions, I think is really, really unfair.
But to pay for gold-plated public sector pensions, Angela Gunn, I take it you're not in the public sector?
No, I'm not.
What are you? You're in the private sector?
Yes.
And you're going to have to work till 70 to pay for your pension?
The average public sector pension, we've been told at the weekend the Conservatives and Liberals are going to cut public sector pensions. The average public sector pension is between £5,000 and £6,000. £5,000 and £6,000 is not a large pension. The people who are going to bear the burden of these cuts in the public sector will be low and middle income working people, and I think it's just profoundly unfair that they should pay the price.
All right.
I'm afraid it seems to be typical of the way in which this new coalition is making decisions.
All right, I'll come to you, Vince Kevin, the woman in green there.
The pensions at the moment, what will happen to people that are medically retired in their 50s or their 60s if the pension age is raised to 70? How are they going to be able to survive for maybe 10, 15 years?
Vince Cable?
Well, can I just answer the first question that was put? And you've been given two totally inaccurate, very, very willfully misleading answers. Willfully misleading. There is no suggestion of public sector pensions being cut. There is a proposal to look at the question of raising contribution rates, because people, particularly at the top end of the public sector, people like MPs, have extraordinarily generous public sector pensions supported by the public, and we need to reform it. It is also wrong that there is no precipitate rush to raise the pension age. All that was announced today is that there's to be a consultation. And it is sensible, if we look at this in the long term, that people should have an opportunity to continue working. One of the things this government's going to do in the next few months is to stop what's called the default age of retirement, where employers can sack you when you're of pension age, even if you want to continue to work. So we want to put that in place. I've already said earlier on, we're introducing a stronger state pension, which is